Those of you that are in the room, I was saying make sure you use the headphones, otherwise you're not going to hear anything. Welcome to the Spain Pavilion. My name is Rodrigo Buenaventura. I'm the chair of the CNMV, and also I chair the Sustainability Task Force in IOSCO. And we are here in an event that we are co-hosting between IOSCO and the Spanish Business Association, or COE, to present and discuss about voluntary carbon markets. And in particular, we are going to present IOSCO's brand new report that we have just published today on how to improve the integrity of voluntary carbon markets. We will have a panel. I will introduce the panel a bit later, but first we are going to hear from Jean-Paul Servet, the chair of IOSCO, that is going to tell us about the latest creature of the IOSCO building, which is this report that we have just published today. Jean-Paul, the floor is yours.
So, is it fine? Okay, not too tall? Okay. So, thank you, Rodrigo, for your kind words. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure and honor for me, in my capacity as IOSCO chair, to have this dialogue with you, because today, I think it's a great event, due to the fact that you know what it means, a COP, try to make progress, avoid delays, and try to obtain consensus. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, we have been able to reach a consensus about a new toolkit related to the management and the supervision of voluntary carbon market, prepared by my colleague Rodrigo, who will start a new life on the 1st of January. Good luck, because he will become my new Secretary General, so I hope that he's still alive and kicking on the 1st of January. But more seriously, that's a very important news, I would say, and that's the reason why I am even proud to be there. But first of all, allow me to extend my gratitude to the Spanish government, the Spanish Biodiversity Foundation, and the Elcano Royal Institute for hosting us today. More generally, if I may, in my capacity as IOSCO chair, but also on behalf of all board members, allow me also to express my sympathy to all the victims of the recent floods and disaster. And I would say, especially when we know that the fact that the Kingdom of Spain accepted to host this event is much appreciated, and we are with you. I hope that your relative, your family, your friends didn't suffer from these floods. I am, as I told you, very proud to be here, because this event offers a valuable opportunity to present IOSCO final good practices for voluntary carbon market. But I have also to say that today's event is a collaborative effort by IOSCO, the Spanish CNMV, chaired for the time being by Rodrigo, and the Spanish, if I may say, Spanish Confederation of Business Organizations, which is very important that the business is on board, especially when we speak about transition plan, reporting, and of course about carbon market. And allow me also the people who really work on this, not the guy in charge for the marketing. It means Rodrigo, it means also Chris Nathaniel, who is the policy director at IOSCO level, but also I would say the co-chairs of a work stream devoted to the carbon market, Russ Benham, the chair of the USCFTC, and Verena Ross, the chair of the European Agency about Financial Market. But also many stakeholders I see that I have the pleasure to see in the panel. Scott O'Malley, who is, I think, correct me, a well-known stakeholders, and we know the impact also on ISDA and other stakeholders for facilitating the implementation on organic. Thanks to everybody for that. What does it mean, I would say, to have initiative about voluntary carbon market? Just to stress the following, that in a world facing the urgent impact of climate change, our responsibility as financial market supervisor to act has never been clearer. It's evident that government alone cannot address this challenge. Private finance must play a significant role. In other words, where private finance is engaged, so too is the regulatory community, of which IOSCO, as the global standard setter for financial market, are crucial part. Why IOSCO? I'm not sure that everybody know IOSCO. Of course, everybody knows that headquarters of IOSCO are located in Madrid. I'm very happy. We are in fact the Basel Committee, but just that we are located not in Basel, but in Madrid. And we are in charge for many initiatives about standard setting relating to financial market, financial product, investor protection, fair and transparent market. You have also to know that IOSCO, it means consensus, and it means a global approach. We are members of the IOSCO. It means the capacity to have 130 jurisdictions on board. We, people like Rodrigo, myself in Belgium, the SEC, in Japan, the GFSA, I see the Chief Sustainability Officer of the GFSA just in front of me. Thanks for your support. We are in charge altogether of the supervision of 95% of the whole financial market all around the world. So it means that whenever there is a global risk, whenever there are global challenges and opportunity, we must be somewhere on the stage. And that's the reason why we decide, I would say, to take action initiative about carbon market, which are poised to play a significant role in combating climate change. Today, it's an important day just because I have the pleasure to see you one of the real scoop of all COP29. Of course, I'm sure to say he's exaggerating. That's a chair. He has to sell the output of his organization. And that's right to say that one of the advantages of a COP is to give us the opportunity to perform a role about accountability, to explain to you, to other people, stakeholders, what we have been able to do in 1 year. And that's the reason why I am very happy to tell you that you can drop all even today, because now you have the capacity to read this report of 52 pages, 80 footnotes included, but more seriously, because it gives a solution to many comments about what do we need about voluntary carbon market. I presume that everybody knows McCartney, a real wise man, and Mark published in June of this year an op-ed in the Financial Times. Okay? For once, I would say Mark was rather pessimistic, or at least asking to take action, because, as you know, there were some questions about integrity of carbon market, and he was saying, I would say in a nutshell, the ambience is gloomy. So we have the choice between two possibilities. First, to stop and start crying, but we are doing it. Second possibility, to take action and to provide to the market, the voluntary carbon market manager, the investor, stakeholders, the citizen, the government, I would say, new kind of regulation. And that's what we are able to do. And I think that's the reason I'm so proud to say, with the support of all the members of the IOSCO system, that we are able to answer to the question raised by McCartney, stop debating carbon market and start building them. That's what we are doing. So does it mean that there is something very negative about carbon market? I wouldn't say that. When you start a new business, the same that with crypto and other aspects, by definition, you start at the domestic level, and after some time you switch to a cross-border, more global business model. For this you need some kind of regulation, and that's the reason why we decide already, I would say 3 years ago, to start this new work stream. But we are not alone, let us be clear. Today is also an important event because I have the pleasure to announce, and just in front of me you see Anya from the World Bank, that we have also now, that's the first time that we have that with the World Bank. We have also this kind of initiative with OECD, with the IFMF and also FSB. But this is the first time that I had the pleasure to announce that we have a collaboration with the World Bank about carbon market. And if you are not convinced, you also have just to watch a video explaining Jean Pesme from the World Bank and myself why we start together to tackle this issue, World Bank and IOSCO. There is no, I would say, competition between World Bank and IOSCO. World Bank, it means, I would say, a focus about environmentalists. We are in charge for financial. So that's the reason also why it's also the first time that we are able to release together two videos. Thanks to you, Anya, and thanks to your management and all your colleagues. In order to be a little bit more precise, I would say I just have to tell you that we didn't start yesterday. In fact, we start our journey 3 years ago. And during this time, we didn't try to work in an ivory tower. We had a lot of discussion with stakeholders from every part of the ecosystem to understand the evolving landscape of this market and how they can be structured to foster transparency, efficiency, integrity. What does it mean? It means that when we discuss carbon market and the net zero transition, the simplest solution, but much easier to say than to do, of course, would likely be the adoption of emission trading schemes across jurisdiction and across sector. This is, of course, the quickest and surest way to achieve straight line reduction in emission. The good news, and when you see the good news, you know that there will be other news after that, but the good news is that some jurisdictions have already implemented such scheme and many others are in progress. But of course, we have to think about other scenarios, and that's the reason why IOSCO sought to support jurisdiction to provide a key consideration for implementing emission trading scheme. But let us be fair, we must acknowledge that we do not live in an ideal world where straight line reduction is possible across the globe. Countries and corporations need pathways, step-by-step approach that reflect their unique domestic circumstances. Emerging markets, for example, face their own socio-economic challenges. A lot of respect for that. And this is where carbon credit markets, whether voluntary or based in jurisdictional frameworks, are set to play a pivotal role in the sustainable finance landscape. Why? Just because voluntary carbon market can foster collaboration between developed and emerging markets, as the vast majority of projects underpinning credits are located in the global south, while demand, of course, comes from developed countries. Yet, despite being around for 2 decades, VCM continue to face, and it was rightly stressed by McCartney, to face vulnerabilities that hinder their scaling. However, while many are focused on these quality challenges, I think it's fair to say that few have addressed, ladies and gentlemen, another critical aspect, market integrity. And that's the reason why we decide to be there, in order to be helpful, even if we are not climate regulator. And the lack of transparency, uncertainty around legal and regulatory framework, a high potential, yes, for conflict of interest and insufficient oversight all pose significant risk to the evolution of this market. What does it mean? Just that lack of transparency, uncertainty over legal and regulatory treatment, the high potential for conflict of interest across the value chain, the potential for market manipulation or fraud, and the lack of oversight all create risk to the evolution of this market. And to harness their potential, this market must operate with the highest standards of both environmental and financial integrity, because we know by definition the journey is fascinating, positive, challenging. That's the reason why we are all there, but it's about trust. And if the trust is not there, it means questions from your kids, your family, your relative, citizens about possible greenwashing. And that's the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, and given our mandate to promote fair and efficient market, it was only a matter of time for IOSCO to step in, but I'm proud to say that we are ahead of the curve on this issue 3 years ago. As I told you, we are not climate regulator, but financial market regulator. And of course, we understand what constitutes a well-functioning, sound, liquid market. And what does it mean? Just to give you, I would say, a flavor of what you are already starting to read during my speech for the 52 pages. We, building on our expertise, we have developed 21 good practices to promote financial integrity in voluntary carbon market, principles that are applicable to any carbon credit market. And in fact, these good practices have 3 overarching objectives. Support the establishment of sound market structure and appropriate architecture for custody, trading and settlement. Promote transparency to foster information symmetry and ensure orderly and fair trading. And last but not least, advocate for adequate market conduct to prevent fraud, market abuse, insider dealing and scams. How do we achieve that? Well, just to tell you the main aspect of the 4 focus areas. One, and it's not a surprise, especially if you used to be an asset manager, if you was involved on managing a stock exchange, these principles are not revolutionary. That's maybe also the reason why we didn't have pushback. Normally, when people like me or Rodrigo are starting a reform at national or international level, you can expect, sorry to say that to Scott, not material, not proportionate, not transparency, where the cost-based analysis and so on, and benefit analysis and so on. This was not the case. And I would say at 2 stages we perform, I would say, consultation in the sector, no pushback. Because let us be clear, I think that everybody, even people making money with this business, and I don't have any problem with people making money with that, they were able to understand that due to the capacity they would have to work with this toolkit, it's now much more easy to distinguish good practices from poor practices. So in fact, it's a win-win approach. And that's the reason why I think that it's a rather consensus-based approach by saying that there are 5 focus on an area. The first one, is it, ladies and gentlemen, a revolution, something shocking, exaggerated to say that when you are managing a carbon market, you need to have clear and effective regulatory framework that provide legal certainty and proportional oversight. In many jurisdictions, there remains a lack of clarity regarding the legal treatment of carbon credit. I'm sure that ISDA could agree with me on this. This is crucial for important how a carbon credit is created, used, sold and retired. And it will have an impact on their treatment for tax, accounting and insolvency. The regular treatment, on the other hand, will clarify which rules apply to the market and if existing financial regulation, such as those related to money laundering, may apply. 2, enhance transparency, ladies and gentlemen, in carbon credit creation and trading, with robust registries that accurately track credits from issuance to retirement. Stakeholders indeed need comprehensive information on project quality, methodologies and trading data similar to what is available in traditional financial market. Again, we are not reinventing wheel. It's more or less the same approach, I'm sorry to say, to make the comparison with the, I would say, the digital asset industry. Can we start with well-known principle and to copy and paste to some extent this well-known principle which has quite an evidence, I would say, for many people. And of course, companies should be transparent about how they use carbon trading to meet emission targets. This means, of course, clear disclosure on the quality and credibility of the credits they are using. 3, focus area. Strong governance standards, risk management framework, and policy to address conflict of interest within the carbon credit ecosystem. From due diligence to robust cyber security measure ensures the integrity of carbon market that requires oversight. Registries must also have good risk management and sound governance. As with any custodians, they must have the methods to place to reconcile their records regularly. This will promote, of course, accuracy and completeness and help the integrity of carbon credit market. Again, something which is well known by many market participants for 30 years, which is supervised in all around the world in many jurisdictions for traditional trading venue and asset management, asset manager. 4, priority. 4, I would say, a focus area. Comprehensive market surveillance must be there in order to detect and prevent fraud, abuse and disruptive behavior. Voluntary carbon market must be monitored just like any other financial market. It's obvious. Surveillance to detect fraud or market manipulation. Just the reason for that is just to stress and repeat that in traditional market, regulators use transaction and position data to monitor for market abuses and bring enforcement action. But it is important for trading venues themselves to conduct market surveillance and trade monitoring to ensure the integrity of trading. And last but not least, fifth focus area, fair, open, fair and accessible trading for all participants and standardization to boost market liquidity. Again, a part of the solution is about standardization. It's always the same story when you start from typically domestic initiative, and I'm not saying that from a pejorative point of view, and they are switching to a more global professional world. And underpinning all of this, if we want market to achieve depth, is international cooperation absolutely instrumental. Consistency in standards and enforcement across borders will indeed be crucial for the global growth of carbon market. And I believe with all IOSCO board members, because of course it was endorsed by all members, we never vote at IOSCO level, I believe that IOSCO good practices will serve as essential building blocks for establishing trust and integrity in carbon credit market. And by promoting effective regulation, ensuring transparency, and implementing sound and robust governance, we can build together carbon market that truly support the transition to allow carbon market economy. And now I will turn to Rodrigo and to the panelists, and I would like to thank you for your attention, and just to tell you, please, if you have some time to start the reading of the 52 pages. If you are a little bit tired, you can switch to the video produced by the World Bank with the involvement of IOSCO. I think it's an excellent starting point. You see, the objective of every COP is that people like us are able to be helpful, to have an added value, and that's what we've been able to do together. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Jean-Paul. We are going to, after this presentation of what IOSCO has published today, we're going to turn to the panel. We have on the far end Cristina Rivero, Director for Industry, Energy, Environment and Climate. That's a lot, Cristina, at the Spanish Business Association and co-host of this event. We have Scott O'Malley, CEO of ISDA, the International Swaps and Derivatives Association. We have Corley Leroux, Senior Specialist at the UNSSE, and we have to my left, okay, thank you. We have Anshari Rahman, Director at Gen Zero. They were reminding me that we need to grab the microphone on the top. Okay. So I'm going to be firing some questions directly at you, but also please feel free to react to the comments by the others. We have a bit more than half an hour for the rest of the panel. I would like to start with Anshari because we had big news early this week about Article 6 and the use of carbon credits. It's a process that you have followed closely. And I would like to ask you, what do you see in terms of the current state of carbon markets in general, and how they have evolved in recent years? Before moving to the other topic that we will cover later, but I was just underlining that this is more and more a topic of, high importance currently.
Thanks, Rodrigo, and thank you to IOSCO for inviting me. Congratulations on the report. Excellent. I've read it. Maybe I'll cover two quick aspects, right, in terms of the evolution of the carbon market, how the market has shaped today, and how the governance of the market has also evolved, and what we potentially would see in future as the market grows. In the past, the voluntary carbon market, as was mentioned by Jean-Paul earlier, it's been around for a long time, 20 years, right? But only in the recent past few years has the market really picked up and gained a lot of attention, and at the same time, blowback from media. Whether meritorious or not, whether credible, some of these criticisms, it has come under scrutiny, both on the supply and the demand side. And so we are seeing the carbon markets evolve. And I like the title because I think it underlines one of the points that I want to make, that the voluntary carbon market today and the compliance market has kind of blurred. And potentially in future, we see the two converge. Right. For example, the Article 6.4 mechanism itself, the decision that was taken, it issues two types of credits. One that's authorized by governments for Article 6 use, for international compliance use, and one that's approved by governments for potentially other kinds of purposes, which could include voluntary carbon markets. So what might happen in future is that you see voluntary and compliance kind of blur and converge, and we will have labels instead that defines the use case for what the credits can be used for, whether it's by corporates or by countries or by airlines towards international aviation commitments. And that's how I see the market evolve. In terms of governance, in the past, carbon markets have largely been self-regulated by the standard bodies. That is the arbiter of truth in terms of the quality of the carbon credits, and we've seen the scrutiny. And we also observed the emergence of what I like to call meta standards, right, or governance international bodies that look at establishing quality benchmarks on both supply and demand. So you've got bodies like ICVCM and the Voluntary Carbon Market Initiative that tries to address a lot of these pain points around supply and demand quality and potentially set the bar on what is good enough for carbon markets. And at the same time, we see governments weighing in. Regulators, policymakers are starting to weigh in on compulsory disclosure. If you use carbon credits, please disclose what type, where is it from, right, how much, how are you claiming against your product or your target. Financial regulators are also coming in, and it's quite timely. And I've also written an op-ed in one of our local media papers around how regulations are imminent, particularly for a market that is going to scale and mature. And just to end off on the introductory note, we foresee the carbon markets to grow probably tenfold by 2030 from where we are today. And when we look at the demand side, it's roughly split between what corporates the demand from corporates towards their corporate targets, and for international compliance, be it international aviation or NDCs. So roughly you're going to see a strong demand and split halfway between both corporates and compliance, and that's going to be quite instructive on how the regulatory framework for the carbon markets evolve in the next couple of years. And so the role that IOSCO plays and other standard bodies like esta is going to be absolutely important on the financial integrity aspects of the carbon market as it scales. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anshari. Before asking Cory about the trading I would like to turn to Christina, because Anshari mentioned the use of the credits by companies. And well, you represent the businesses in Spain. Spain is in the EU. The EU has a very peculiar cap and trade emission allowance system. For certain things you can use those, for certain things you cannot. Certain companies in certain sectors can, others. How do you see the usage of that by Spanish corporates?
Thank you, Rodrigo, and first of all, congratulations to IOSCO for the report, because I think it's very reassuring for the companies to have the financial regulator in these carbon markets that we have been developing since 2005 with the Kyoto Protocol. So it's 20 years of developing, as Ashani was saying, carbon markets, and I think we have learned quite a few things after 20 years. In the EU, as you know, we've been pioneers with the ETS. That was the big compliance market for carbon credits in the whole world. And you were right, Ashani, it's from the point of view of a European company, the issue is you cannot nowadays use voluntary carbon markets in the ETS. So you cannot use them for compliance. So if you cannot use them for compliance, then the issue of transparency and quality of the credits, it's crucial, because not an European company is not going to get involved in credits that can give the impression to the public that they are trying to greenwashing, and we have now several directives in the EU trying to deal with green claims, the empowerment of the consumer. So in order to use especially the voluntary carbon markets for a European company, I think it's absolutely crucial the issue of quality, verification, use of standards, and that's why I think having the financial market regulator on board, giving clues to the companies and putting some order in these carbon markets, it's essential, because what I think we have demonstrated also in the EU is that carbon markets and having instruments of carbon pricing is key to help compliance. We have very, very stringent commitments in the companies in order to reduce our emissions, and we need those instruments to help the companies, especially those who have not easily know what they call the hard to abate sectors, that they don't have the technology nowadays, so they would need any other tools to comply, and carbon markets have to be one option.
Thank you very much, Cristina. Corley, Cristina was talking about transparency, and of course she was referring to transparency especially on the issuance of the credit to know about the quality of the credit. But there is another meaning of transparency, which is the transparency in trading. This has been mainly an OTC market so far. But how do you see the possibilities of having more on-exchange trading and the meaning of that for the secondary market transparency?
Thanks, Rodrigo. Yeah, we've seen quite a lot of interest in the stock exchange environment in formalizing the carbon markets. I think, there's been a realization that you don't have to, John Paul was talking about reinventing the wheel and not reinventing the wheel. And exchanges have established a long time ago already that they're quite capable of managing the trade of carbon credits as well. The platforms are in place, the infrastructure is in place, and it does bring that added element of transparency and price discovery that is so critical. I think we all acknowledge that that's one of the big challenges in the carbon markets is around pricing. We need the prices of carbon credits in the VCMs to be higher than what it is to enable capital flows to where it's needed. And exchanges really bring not only the price discovery, but an added liquidity and the added kind of economies of scale. It is a challenge that we're seeing quite a lot of fragmentation in terms of exchanges that are starting different markets on their own. What we're seeing, particularly interestingly, is governments are feeling drawn to create carbon markets in order to meet their NDCs or to create opportunities for capital flows within their markets. And the first port of call for them is the stock exchange. So you have the market infrastructure, you're a convener of buyers and sellers, create a carbon market. You can run it. But the regulatory environment doesn't always exist. The liquidity doesn't exist. The economies of scale is a challenge. But we're seeing really fantastic innovation. If you look at Egypt, for example, who launched their voluntary carbon market at COP27 2 years back and started trading earlier this year, they're doing fantastic innovation and not regulation as much as checking the quality of what comes in as well as what goes out. That is really critical. So we're very excited about what we're seeing in the exchange environment, and we're really excited about the work of IOSCO also in this space, because it helps to create that regulatory framework that exchanges really need to be able to create a market that people can rely on and that has the need for integrity.
Thank you, Corley. Precisely the purpose of the paper of IOSCO is to contribute to that regulatory framework in a manner that is useful, as Jean-Paul was saying, that is useful for market participants, for exchanges to build from there. That is easy. That is very obvious. Scott, an element for being able to trade these in exchanges, like Corley was pointing out, is to have standardized instruments that are fungible between themselves and that are susceptible to anonymous trading. And we've been there before with derivatives a number of times, right? So it shouldn't be that hard. ISDA has done some work on these. How do you see the standardization side of these matter?
Congratulations, Rodrigo and Jean-Paul, for the work to develop this report. It's a great contribution. Also great contribution, as Anshari noted, the Article 6 solutions that have been developed here. Let me just get to the end. We will have a successful carbon market once it's on exchanges. We're done. It will be surviving, it will be deep, and it will be liquid, and we can declare success. But there's a lot of work that has to be done to get there. The most important work is standard definitions and standards around that. Huge thanks to the Integrity Council and to Corsia for establishing what are the highest standards in the market today. we should all rally around them. We should apply them across the entire market. We should apply them to the UN credits as well as the private market credits. They're fantastic standards that everybody can count on. The next bit is to continue to work on the legal framework. Not every country has a very clear legal framework as to what carbon credits are, and we have to continue to pursue that. The issue of how is bankruptcy treated, how is security passed, those are very fundamental legal questions. ISDA's working on it. We have a number of white papers. We've worked with the World Bank on this. They've done terrific work as a partner here. Every time they're out in the field speaking with countries and economic development, the capacity building at IOSCO, we talk about legal reform and making sure that the sound legal principles are well established for all products, including carbon markets. The next standard is to bring greater transparency through other standards, independent verification through rating agencies. Exchanges will bring transparency. We want standard fungible products here that can be taken apart, securitized, or futurized, and that will allow much more liquidity and trading for more market participants. I am not a carbon expert, and we have used carbon credits to offset. I rely heavily on the independent verification, the experts who are in the field, the scientists that can say this is a good credit, this is a bad credit. The only way consumers are going to be able to understand and price these is by having that reference and greater detail about those products. Today, what you buy in the open OTC market, you can't really benchmark your price. You have no idea if that's a good price, a high price. Maybe you're just in the market because you want to do the right thing, but you can't say that you've got the best price or you can compare prices because we don't have enough transparency. We need to resolve that. We need much more standardization and transparency into this market, which means moving it from the OTC to the lit exchanges. So those are the steps that we need to take here. I am encouraged by the progress that's been made, and the other element here, and to Christina's point, CBAM is another important factor. CBAM is going to have a carbon border adjustment mechanism that will dictate what comes into the EU and at what price. You got to pay your carbon tax. I sincerely hope that carbon credits can also be eligible for that and that they can be deemed acceptable as part of your entry into the EU for trading and for importing. So we'll have to see. There's a lot of work to be done to make sure that they're considered eligible, but high standards are going to have to be required to say, have companies paid their fair tax as required by the EU. So there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of success so far, but a lot more work to do.
I mean, the last point you mentioned, I think, will depend a lot on the equivalent quality of the credits, as you said, but also on the pricing on that, meaning that if you have emission allowances in Europe trading at 70 and carbon credits trading at 14.
I think if you can bring greater liquidity, if we're all looking at the same price for the same product, you're going to have much more engagement. You're also going to have demand. People are going to be demanding carbon credits if that's an acceptable pathway into the EU for your carbon border adjustment mechanism. So there's a bit of an incentive that Europe can put here to encourage people to use these for the right purposes, to pay that tax. So we'll have to see how that develops. But I agree, a lot of work has to be done. Standardization, liquidity will raise the price of these products because more demand will come to the product and you're going to see more buyers for sure.
Thank you. I mean, look, talking about the quality of credits, one essential element of these is the infrastructure in which those credits are deposited, and in particular the registers. Corley, I mean, how do you see the role of the registries? What can we do to improve the level of trust and the proper functioning of the markets? Because that is, I guess, an essential part of the infrastructure. Even way before the exchanges start thinking of trading anything, the first thing you ask is, are the assets where they should be, and are they registered properly? How do you see this?
Yeah, this is a challenge for exchanges because they don't have the jurisdiction to regulate the registry, but the market users rely on them, whatever they list, that the exchange has exercised some form of vetting over what it lists. So this is a challenge. And I think it's something that a regulatory framework will help to resolve. I think one of the other challenges with the registries is the amount of customization that you see in carbon credits, and the need for that level of customization also makes it difficult, because you have a wide variety of carbon credits, and a lot of clients on exchange are looking for kind of standardized package products. So it will require some agility from the exchanges, but also they will have to build capacity in order to engage with the registries and to understand what level of integrity is in place. I'm not sure that we see exchanges necessarily starting their own registries that much, but relying on the capacity that is in place, but much stronger collaboration and a lot more stringent standards around what the registries keep and how the exchanges list that.
May I re-ask one thing? So you mentioned the role of the registries in parallel or compared to financial markets, and one feeling that we had when we started to look at this a couple of years ago was, if we look at carbon markets and compare that with financial products markets, it is quite stark the level of concentration of roles in one participant. Especially in the primary side, it is as if bonds were issued by the same bank that is doing the deposit, the deposit and the custodian, the same agent bank, even the same rating agency. The level of concentration do you think that might spin off some functions in the future, meaning that what is currently developed by one infrastructure might end up being developed by separate infrastructures to avoid conflicts of interest?
I think it would be useful if that could happen. I mean, we're seeing the same kind of level of concentration in the issuance of carbon credits as well, which makes it difficult for those least developed countries that need the access to capital to access these markets. So the registries and the exchanges need to open up that environment to enable the least developed countries to also become more issuers. I think what makes it useful to bring things on exchange, is that you have exchanges in many of these countries. So we see a lot of concentration at the moment in terms of where on exchange trading takes place, but we're seeing a lot of kind of national initiatives also starting to evolve. They will need to collaborate in order to build liquidity, because on a national level, liquidity is a challenge. But certainly I think that the way that the regulatory framework is becoming more and more enabling of this environment, we're bound to see economies of scale growing, and hopefully that will kind of reduce some of the concentration as well, and opening it up for other market participants to come in.
Yeah, I think you're right that in certain markets, depending on the level of development, you cannot apply the full scale that, or the similar scale that you would have in a developed financial market, because it wouldn't make sense to do that. Anshari, you wanted to comment on this, please?
Yeah, I wanted to probably draw a bit of a distinction here. Might be a slight uniqueness about the carbon market in what the function of a carbon registry is in terms of the issuance, and what underpins the quality of the credits that are being issued by a particular registry. So today I think the issue with liquidity is really that a lot of the trading is happening OTC. And there's no liquidity to go into the exchanges right now. I'm not sure whether it's an issue of one player dominating the market or a few players dominating the market, because at the same time we are talking about standardization. So what we are observing is that a lot of the registries or the carbon programs are actually working with various exchanges, with various countries, on how you can integrate national infrastructure, whether it's registers, ledgers, registries, with the program level registries. And this is one of the hot topics right now in Article 6. What is the function of registries? How will national registries interact with program level registries that actually issue the credits? And what is the function of an international registry under Article 6? What functions can it do? Can it issue? Can it transact? Can it hold? So I think that there needs to be some kind of deconstruction on what the different roles are, and where exchanges and potentially financial market infrastructure could come in at what stage.
To a certain extent, it boils down to the interoperability of registers and the connection of registers, no? Which is something that we have faced before in financial markets also.
Yeah.
And probably I'm seeing Scott and Christina wanted to comment on this, so please go ahead.
Let's just keep, I mean, registries are very important for the market today. And as we think about where we're going to list and market these, they have to be, they're monopolies to some extent, but at the same time, they're utilities. And we have to think about what that is. And there's not a lot of great differentiation in a utility function. There is some, if you're going to do ratings, you can do value add, you can do deeper dives on data. But if you're listing it as a registry, how many do we really need here? And so we need to think about what that's going to be, because we cannot have double counting. We cannot have errors or data, lack of data, poor quality data. It's really important to get this right.
No, and we have to, in the whole value chain of a credit, no? Once a credit is in a registry, that should be also a quality level. So we need to work from the origination of the projects, because I think that the problem is there, no? How the communities, how the markets perceive, how the companies perceive the reality and the quality of that credit. Is this a good project? Is it a project that is giving also environmental benefits and social benefits? And for me, that's a very important issue. You have to work on the quality in the origination of the credits, and so that the company can know what projects are underlying those credits. And then you have several more steps. And for me, once a credit is in a registry, that has to be a safeguard, no? And therefore, to assure the companies that you can go to a registry because that's a quality credit.
Me, just to add, because you mentioned interoperability, right? What we are also observing infrastructure or solutions to look at solving this interoperability across registries. So you've got this new structure called the Climate Action Data Trust that's spearheaded by the World Bank and AITA and the government of Singapore. It's precisely to look at how information across the different registries could be captured in one repository, more or less tracking things real time. So that's quite important. And you are also observing meta registries coming up. It adds to the complexity of the whole ecosystem, but I think there's some ideas there essentially to address this notion of how do you ensure that you can track transparently and also interoperability across different systems.
That's very interesting thing. I mean, we are talking about the qualities of the credits and the primary market and the secondary market and the infrastructures. But one thing we've learned in other markets like compliance, carbon markets, particularly in Europe, but also in other places, is that it would be a mistake to design the market as issuers and final demand users of the credits. For the market to work properly and the prices to smooth out, you need financial traders, you need people making markets, putting their own books at risk, buying and selling those as assets, not necessarily as credits that are going to be used by an industry. Or from that perspective, Scott, the risk investors face, in this type of very nascent early times of these markets are evident. What do you think could mitigate those risks from a purely financial investor perspective?
Well, it comes down to standards. It comes down to the standardization of this product, so you have more participants coming in. They can price it. They can understand their risk about how it looks like. Producers ought to be protected. They're like a farmer. If you think about an agriculture or even a technology credit, they've gone long in the market. They're producing something, carbon credits, and they want to hedge their risk. They want to protect against a downfall in prices or some other calamity. So they too need hedging protection, because if we're going to get the transformation that we hope for in our energy infrastructure, we need trillions of dollars. All of that has to be hedged. We have to manage that financial risk. You have duration risk, you have interest rate risk, you have project risk. All of these things are part and parcel to the energy transition, and carbon credits are no different. So we want to make sure that we have a good, robust hedging market, as well as, and that counts on price transparency and product standardization. And there are really no shortcuts for that. It doesn't 100% have to be on an exchange, but it has to be comparable so we can get better pricing signals. We do not have a forward curve today. We do not know what a forward price for carbon will be. The best proxy is still the European market because but it's a completely different product as you've articulated. So those are the kind of things. Pricing signals and getting forward pricing around this is going to be essential to really deploying capital and making these long-term investments. Understanding what the price of carbon will be in 2 years' time is going to be critical to supporting that. So it is, simply put, standardization and transparency.
Do you think we are very far away from having a forward curve? I mean, a hunch,
At the beginning of the year, I would have said yes. I think there's a number of things that are falling into place, particularly this week, that are making me more encouraged about the direction of travel. It's almost irreversible at this point. Article 6 rules, more regulatory kind of commitment and support for this. I think CBAM is going to actually have a big part of this conversation, and if these become relevant in the CBAM conversation, these will be super useful tools. But there's a long way to go here. There is a long way to go. I'm not trying to be overly optimistic here, but I think there's a pathway in what we have to do around standardization, around independent verification and science-based analysis, and then moving more of these to an exchange. We really do need fungibility here to make these credits less bespoke and more standardized so you can get more people around the table kind of committing financial resources and liquidity to this.
Thank you. Christine, I mean, companies as users of these credits for whatever their jurisdictions allow that, no? Because we know it's very different across the world. There's one recommendation in the report, the 52 pages, that recommends companies to disclose the use of carbon credits whenever they use that to achieve a different level of emissions and net emissions. This has been linked with the risk of greenwashing, accusations of, you're netting off, but with low quality credits, or how do you see that from the corporate perspective?
It comes also to standardizations, no? Companies, as I was saying before, they cannot assume the risk of using a credit that is voluntary and then being blamed of greenwashing, or because they are not sure of the quality of the projects underlying those credits. So a lot of tools have been developed now, the task force on climate disclosure and many standard reporting initiatives that are very useful for the companies because they have to communicate in a framework that is credible for the society. And also we are seeing in a project, it's not always that easy. Now that I'm seeing the picture, a wind farm. Is a wind farm a good project or not? It will depend in the local community. So we need strong also reporting tools that can show the first comparability of the credits, because we need to have clarity on all the different types and standards, and then standardization and tools for the companies to be able to communicate and be perceived that what they communicate is clear, is truthful, and it's of quality.
Well, to a certain extent, European regulation is tackling that already in terms of the new ESRS and...
green claims and CSRD and the CSDDD. We have plenty of reporting challenges.
I feel a sense of tiredness in the way you enumerate all those.
It's yes, the famous regulatory tsunami, of the EU that we are facing in European companies. We have that's also part of the financial world, coming into the carbon regulation. We have very stringent deadlines. We need to communicate on climate. It's easier on biodiversity, for example. It's very complicated. So the time scale is not always accompanied by the development in the companies, and we have many challenges, but the reporting will be there, and also the new tools will help. I'm optimistic.
So am I. So am I. I mean, I was coming from a panel on greenwashing a moment ago, and there the general claim was we need stricter rules on disclosure by companies because we need to ensure that that what we are buying is what they say. So it's a matter of a half full, half empty glass. Shari, there was a reference before to the Article 6.4 announcement. How do you see the future of these in terms of going forward? Demand for, I mean, we already covered that partially a moment ago, but from your perspective, I know that you have been following these very closely.
Actually, I thought to add to the discussion earlier, the other thing that we need are demand signals, right? It's fine. Let's have very stringent disclosures. Companies should disclose whatever they are purchasing, what they're using towards, the attributes of the credits and so on, right? But at the end of the day, as the market scales and matures, would regulators actually stand behind what is being claimed by and what is being disclosed by the companies, right? Because I think what's happening now is not so much greenwashing, but green hushing. Because corporates and companies are afraid to do anything and invest in the carbon markets because there's no air cover, right? There's no regulatory framework for them to be the backstop in terms of, okay, we've provided assurances on the quality, supply, and the claim side. We've restricted on what you can use. But once that's all done, who's the final arbiter that these are credible? And who's going to say that, yes, this is a credible part of a corporate's decarbonization journey? I think that's very important. And I think that's where we are starting to see a bit of a divergence between what's happening in the voluntary carbon market space and what's actually happening in the Article 6 space. Because I follow both quite closely. Right? For example, in Article 6, Article 6.4, Article 6.2, countries towards their NDCs, airlines towards CORSIA, they can use both reductions and removals credits. But today in the voluntary carbon market, there is this perennial debate around removals versus reductions, tech-based versus nature-based, right? But it's the underlying integrity more important that assures 1 ton is 1 ton that's abated, right? So I think that's where we kind of need to come together a bit in terms of the taxonomy. Scott talked about definition. Taxonomy is important. The taxonomy in the voluntary carbon market space is very much quite different from what we understand in the Article 6 space, right? That needs to come together. The acceptance of carbon credits towards corporate decarbonization journey, respecting the mitigation hierarchy, right? You cannot, it's not an alternative to direct abatement. But once that's done, would regulatory oversight actually help to bring credibility to the use of carbon credits in the market? I think that's important.
Thank you very much. One last minute for the other 3 participants in the panel, if you want to underline something or a final message before we wrap up.
Yeah, 2 things maybe. I mean, on the one side, just a quick comment on disclosure. I find it fascinating that greenwashing is resurfacing as a discussion. It was a hot topic 20 years ago when disclosure was very much voluntary, and then it kind of went quiet, and now we're in an environment where disclosure is much more regulated, and we're looking at standards and so on, and now greenwashing is resurfacing, but in the context of not whether people are disclosing or not, but whether what they're disclosing is of the sufficient quality. So we've moved forward in some senses, but in other senses we've moved backwards in terms of not ensuring the quality of the disclosure. Exchanges, I think, play a big role in promoting disclosure, and I think that in the carbon market environment can be leveraged as well. And it's one of the recommendations that we make to our member exchanges as well, is to give guidance to their markets on disclosure. And hopefully, that can be done in a quality manner. And I think, just as a very last comment, something that we haven't spoken that much about, what is critical in the success of carbon markets is capacity building. And that's going to require a lot of collaboration, not only, across the value chain, to build the capacity right through from issuance to the claim and of use.
Absolutely. Scott?
I think it should continue to be a public-private partnership of driving standards, but the market is ready to take this product to the next level. It's important we have good standards and agreed, but those are also, I think, right now the highest standard in the market today is the Integrity Council. Let's take the win there. Let's continue to move forward. Let's align the UN and sovereign rules with the market rules here. So Yeah, Anshari said that we're beginning to breach the line between the two and sell sovereign credits. Let's make sure that they're the same credits of the same quality. And so you've got the market motivation here. I think we're very focused. We're here to solve problems. It's good to have good direction from policymakers in the official sector about what's an acceptable standard and where you want to end up. But let us work out the details and really move forward with this. And I think we can move much more quickly to get to the right spot.
Thank you. Christina?
Yeah, fully agree with Scott. No, it's been 20 years of developing carbon markets. If they succeed here, having the Article 6 rules will help a lot because we will have the governance, but we need to strengthen the public-private partnerships are crucial, I mean, for developing the carbon markets.
Thank you. Well, I mean, maybe just as a final comment, I would like to stress that idea of partnership because when in IOSCO we focused this report, we were clear that we were focusing on one part, an important part, a fundamental part, but just one part of the whole ecosystem. And you need the infrastructures, you need the associations, you need the standardization, market participants, the users and the issuers, and of course the authorities to define the legal frameworks. And is that sense of collective effort that at least I can feel in this COP. I also felt it in the last one, but I think that we are very close of getting a real joint productive effort to do meaningful change on this, which is what it's all about. Thanks a lot to our wonderful panelists for being with us and to our audience, and see you soon. After having read those 52 pages, and the video, of course, and the video. Thank you very much.